Hey, kids, welcome to Just a Game live in the Oodle Noodle studio. As I said, as an homage to the great Kevin Pollak, I am Just a Game. You know who you are. I'm glad you're here. We are broadcasting live from Treaty 7 territory, and everyone is welcome. This is an all-inclusive podcast, so welcome. Feel safe here. It's a safe place. I'm glad you're with us. I'm going to kick it off because we had talked about this for a while and was really excited, and it's still going to happen. But just an update. We were hoping to have Kelsey Snow, the wife of Flames Assistant General Manager Chris Snow, on today's program. We set it up. We talked on Friday, but chatted with Kelsey last night. They were hoping to have Chris back from the hospital on Saturday. He was still in, as a matter of fact, is still in now, but we do have some positive news for you. Kelsey, on her social media account and on Twitter just a little while ago, tweeting a couple hours, but the update procedure done. Chris is good, a little bit loopy. In fact, just asked or said fentanyl is awesome. Kids, fentanyl is not awesome. We don't joke about that, but in this case, it's a really good sign. So we are hoping to get Kelsey Snow on in a future podcast. We have a remarkable replacement. We'll get to her in just a moment, but I do also want to give a little love to Kelsey Snow's Sorry I'm Sad podcast. If you haven't checked it out, it's probably a good primer for when she comes on. The latest one for me hits real hard, real close to home because Chris is on it. So Chris and Kelsey spend an hour and a half talking about his 2 visits to the hospital in the fall and over Christmas and the times that they didn't think he was coming home. And to hear Chris, I could still hear I know his speech is difficult and slurred a little bit, but I can still hear my buddy in there. So it's good. But I have just an incredible amount of respect and admiration for Kelsey as she is it's one thing to keep your family together. It's one thing to take care of a spouse. It's a whole other thing to have the cojones or whatever we're going to say to share it with the rest of the world. And we get all excited around here. And, you know, we had a great conversation with Brent Dodging Horse on Friday, and it was real. It was real. But man, is this raw. This is really raw. And she writes it. She produces it. She does an amazing job. And she's also got a Patreon account. So if you wanted to support her that way, you could as well. Kelsey Snow, Sorry I'm Sad podcast. Look it up. Check it out. It's worth your while. Just a quick update on the local hockey heroes. When last we spoke, they completed the first brother for brother trade. That didn't help them. That I want my money back, and I had no money invested in the game on Saturday. But somewhere, Jacques Lemaire smiling. Somewhere Jacques Lemaire said, see, it still works. You can take a fan base and a team out of it and just smother them to death. God bless you, Jacques. God bless the Minnesota Wild, who just they keep telling me that the Kaprizov kid is a Hart candidate trophy, Hart Trophy candidate. He's great. He's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I've seen him play live this year. But watching that team, oh, my God, it just reminded me. And you kids, this is the old man yelling at the clouds. You kids have it good now. You're complaining about these 3 games against the Oilers this year, not 5. I get that part. But you used to be 8 games against that Wild team in a season. 8! Ugh, just death warmed over. The local heroes booed off the ice on Saturday. Good. Great. Fantastic. And let me tell you why. If you're booing, you care. If you're booing, you care. The last thing you want right now is a little golf tap. Thanks very much. See you later. That's apathy. You know what apathy is? Apathy is death. Apathy is death. At least the fans are pissed off, which means apathy hasn't crept in. That now becomes the major concern the rest of the way. You do not want to allow apathy to creep into your fandom, to creep into your dressing room, to creep into your organization. And the next month is going to be fascinating theater if you like traffic accidents replayed over and over and over again. I just don't see, there's 7 points out of a playoff spot. God bless some donkey on this program 10 days ago who talked about St. Louis and being in last place in January. You never know. Well, that looks like a missed opportunity, doesn't it? Anywho, you've got some pretty significant deals coming up next year, 23-24. And if anything about last year taught us that you can't leave things to the last moment. So just so we're all on the same page, Backlund, Lindholm, Toffoli, Dubé, Zadorov, Hanifin, and Tanev all come due next year, after next year. But what are you going to begin to do with them this offseason? You have a general manager who is due a new contract. Is he your guy? Is he not your guy? That is something that I think has to be dealt with. And quite honestly, Ryan Pike, and he'll join us later on in the program to talk about the local hockey heroes, of course, managing editor of Flames Nation. Last week, Ryan Pike brought it up, and it really hit home for me. I have been here 20 seasons now. My 20th anniversary starting in this market will be May 5th. The blessing that I had is my first year, the Heroes went to the Stanley Cup Final Game 7. And that, if that doesn't happen, I'm not here talking to you today. There's a lot of things that don't happen. But since then, it has been up and down and up and down and up and down and never consistent. Lots of coaches, couple of general managers, rehired a coach, superstars, not superstars, some that blossomed when they got here, some that blossomed when they left here. But it has been a roller coaster that, quite honestly, and I think we get our co-host in here. I'm going to let her speak on this too. I take no great joy in this whatsoever, but it's an observation I will make. Last week, Tuesday through Saturday, as a hockey fan, as a fan of the Calgary Flames, was tough, real tough. Because there's no shortage of people. Craig Button, one of them, former Flame general manager, TSN, friend of the program, also has a podcast on this here network. He said it. Most complete team in the league, best team in the league, should win the Stanley Cup. Flames dominated them. Found a way to lose. Played okay against Toronto, who's a pretty good team. Found a way to lose. And then just didn't look interested. Didn't do anything spectacular at the trade deadline. I take you back, not to the Minnesota game, but the Toronto game in particular, but also the Boston game. One of the things that this franchise gets right is its alumni. You will not find a better group of alumni in the entire National Hockey League, maybe in all of pro sports. Another aspect of this organization that they get right is their foundation. Led by Candace Scouty, the foundation is also trailblazers and maybe the best in the league. When it comes to the on-ice product, when it comes to the building, when it comes to all of the things that are the critical front-facing pieces of an organization, it's a freaking roller coaster. It's up and it's down. It's up and it's down. If you are listening to this podcast in Calgary, are you from Calgary or are you from somewhere else? Because that's also a bit of a thing we don't talk about, but is an issue. Most people are from somewhere else. When you are what you are right now, when you don't give people a chance to believe, when you are up and down and up and down and up and down, things begin to creep in. Apathy. Last week, and this isn't everybody, but last week, I watched that Toronto game and I saw some of the pictures. And the first thing that came to mind is that's a lot of people who are season ticket holders. And part of the problem in Calgary and part of what has been fostered with this roller coaster is Flames fans have two jerseys, their Flames jersey and their favorite team's jersey. And it pains me to say it, but it's an issue. It's a real issue. And this organization has to find a way to build some continuity, has to find a way to have people believe in it, has to find a way to have little kids in arenas wearing more Flames merchandise than Vegas Golden Knights merchandise. Fact. Up north, that team, do we have a nation up there? We do, yeah. They're not really good. But that hockey club, living off the avails of the 80s. have been for 40 years and doing a spectacular job. But go to an Oiler game. See 97% of the people wearing jerseys. They are. It just is. And yes, it's just amazing development for Connor McDavid. Oh, that's right. They won a lottery. Doesn't matter. This organization has never picked higher than fourth. Never picked higher than fourth. Have never had a first-round pick. And are likely going to do what they're really famous for. Miss the playoffs by a couple of points and cost themselves some draft space, if you will, positioning. Does this organization need a top-to-bottom reboot? Got to ask ourselves that. They do a lot of things really good. They really, really do. And they do a lot of things that are really, really safe. But last week, if anything, it just hits you right smack dab in the face like a wet fish. There are times, and there are a number of people that support this club who have two jerseys. And somehow the Flames need to close that gap. Somehow the Flames need more kids wearing more Flames colors. And I'm not saying they don't get me wrong, but this needs to become an insulated Flames town. It needs to have this fan base rally around it. It needs this fan, and God bless you. I know I can hear the chat boards. Are not even chat boards anymore, but the diehards. This isn't about the diehards. This is about everybody else that makes up that fan base. Hard, just a hard week. All right. Should remind everybody, we are live in the Noodle Oodle studio. We're not just crazy about noodles. We just put the same energy right back into the community, which they do. They live up to it. Oodle Noodle studio and Oodle Noodle. We're in the Oodle Noodle studio, but Oodle Noodle, 2 locations, 1244 17th Avenue Southwest, 105 Main Street North in Airdrie, pickup and delivery. It is fortuitous that our guest host today could spend some time with us. Almost kind of like it was meant to be. She was coming in anyway. She wanted to get a chance to take a look at what we're doing. I'm a huge fan, have been for a long time. Looking at her weekend schedule will make you nauseous and dizzy. And if you're afraid of heights, it'll probably give you anxiety. She is just a tremendously talented journalist who, and I put this out on social a couple weeks ago. If you're not following her on social, you're kind of missing the heartbeat of Calgary because she does a lot of the stories that are really, really important. Cami Kepke of Global, kind enough to spend some time as our co-host today. How are you, first of all?
Well, that was a very nice intro. Truly a who's who of the most available person
that's right.
Show today.
That's right. Of all the available people, you were the first one I called.
I mean, I do appreciate that. It's
so
fun to be here.
Well,
with the Rob father.
Oh,
the Rob father.
Yeah. That just means I'm old. That just means I'm old. I don't know where to start because do you care to opine on am I wrong about anything I have just said? Is there anything that you would like to take umbrage with? It has been a very difficult week in this city. If you were a fan of the local hockey heroes, there's some things to celebrate, and we'll get to those. And we mentioned a few of those. But from a pure hockey standpoint, it was bizarre how last week unfolded, wasn't it?
It was. And maybe the one thing I will disagree with is that apathy hasn't set in. Booing does mean you care, yes. But I feel like there's a certain portion of the fan base that has checked out enough that they're not putting a lot of pressure on somewhere where you could make meaningful change with this organization.
Like?
If this was Vancouver, Murray Edwards would be getting the Aquilini treatment. We don't have people with signs saying, get rid of Murray at Flames games. Like, we see people getting those signs taken away at Canucks games. We're not seeing that kind of reaction from the fan base. And maybe, like, on many levels, it's a good thing. We don't have a culture around the team like they do in Vancouver.
Do you want to see a jersey on the ice? No. Right? I don't like that. And as much as we poke fun at our friends up north, that's something that they've had to do. That's almost become the de facto tradition. When we're unhappy, we're throwing one on the ice, right? I'm sure we're going to see versions of it. But they got booed. Thank God they got booed. Because if they just...
I've ever heard them get booed.
Oh, I've heard them. They've been booed before. But, I think it was building. And I think that was... And the acknowledgement, Daryl Sutter, you can talk to this. Daryl Sutter acknowledged that, he was there, he would have booed. I think some of the players said that. It's a tough piece. Now, let me ask you this. Does the organization need a reboot? And I don't know how to frame that, because I'm a Tree guy. I like Tree. Tree's a friend of mine. He's been, given a decade here. I don't think he hired the last coach. I think he's had to work with the last coach, but I don't think he hired the last coach. I think ownership does play a role in hockey operations. I've credited Mike Russo from The Athletic, wrote about the Zucker trade a couple years ago that didn't happen because Murray wasn't available to approve it. Aquilini, Foley, Dundon, Molson, that's not a Calgary thing. That's a pro sports thing. But it's an interesting point you raise. Will we get to that point? Ownership just never gets talked about in this city, does it?
No, like a tiny bit, but they just don't face the pressure that you see in other markets. And I wonder if that's just because over decades and decades of everything just being, okay, miss one year, make the next.
Yeah.
The pressure hasn't been there. And frankly, for owners, if you get to the first round of playoffs, that's all bonus money for you.
Right.
How many fans were in the red lot last year?
Oh, yeah. But how many more could have been in if they had devised a plan to beat the Oilers or had beaten the Oilers or, and then that to me was, weird in the way that for 6 periods or 4 or 5 periods, it kind of looked like this might be a runaway for Calgary. And then it went exactly the opposite. It seemed like the whole off season was, at least the beginning of the off season was a hangover from that. And then the two main pieces bolt.
The whiplash of that 10-day stretch.
Oh, right. And, this season, honestly, I'm not surprised Huberdeau struggled. I'm not surprised that, Weegar and Kadri haven't really found their game. It's the goaltending that shocks me, but I'm not, I think those guys that came from Florida, I think Kadri, I think they're all going to be better next year.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be tough, but Jonathan Huberdeau loves hockey so much. I actually met him for the first time many moons before he came here.
Yep.
But even when he was done with the St. John Sea Dogs and he was in the NHL, you would see him at Harbor Station so much, just coming back to watching the Sea Dogs do their playoff run, doesn't know any of the players anymore, just loves to be around it. And I think he will rediscover that love of the game. But frankly, the roller coaster that this franchise is, it's going to be up and down. They're probably going to be really good next year.
Yep.
But I think we need to start getting a little more serious about the expectation conversation. I made this simile as a joke on Twitter a little while ago, but I truly believe it, especially when we talk about expectations. The Flames are like a terrible boyfriend that you have in your early 20s. Not even a boyfriend. Like this, they're the situationship of hockey, in that they are capable of being so great. But more often than not, you get let down. So you try to sit down and say, what are we?
Right.
What are we? What are we doing here? They're like, well, like let's not put a label on this. Let's see where it goes.
Right.
And what does that lead to?
Well, it's only taking
fun for everybody.
No, but see, we're 7 shows in, and we finally got to our first gender argument. Are they that, or are they we're just friends? Are they caught in the we're just friends mode in the National Hockey League? We're not really serious, are we? No, we're not going all the way, are we? No, we're just friends. And it ends. It's an October to April romance. Not even that. We're platonic.
The Flames F-boy factor. Copyright it.
By the way, have at her. I'm the only one not allowed to swear on this program. That goes back to superhero Ty.
My mom's going to watch this. Wait until she's not so excited and she doesn't tune in every time, and then I'll start swearing.
Okay.
Love you, Mom.
Okay. Hi, Mom. But it does, again, and I take no, this is not me taking a run. This is not me taking a shot. This is not me doing anything. This is just me going, I've been here for 20 years, and here's what I have seen. This reminds me a lot of Brent Sutter's tenure here. That, right up to the deadline, there was always a decision to make. Are they going for it or they aren't going for it? But it's, for whatever reason, right around at least the first year, it just fell off, and they could never recover. They're 7 points back starting, this week. They've been jumped by a team that sold. The Nashville Predators were in sell-off mode and have jumped them. I wouldn't say it's over, but I'm more interested in the next steps, and I'm more interested in whether this should signal a greater, shift. We'll have Ryan on, but you've been around the last couple of years. You know what the temperature is around the arena and the event center. I mean, do you feel confident that that's going to get done?
The event center or a rebuild?
No, the event center. I'm just talking about the one thing.
It'll be done eventually.
What's eventually?
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I kind of feel like Lucy in the football. I've taken that, I've gone, I thought we had it. And then there's the Christmas, massacre, right? And it got pulled off the shelves. And everybody's happy and everybody's saying the right thing. And little Gary came to town last week and I can say that. I know him.
And contradicted. Like there was contradiction in that. I don't know. No. Like literally in what they were saying. Because at City Hall, some members of council said there was no meeting. I'm like, well, Gary just said there was a meeting. And then
I thought Gondek acknowledged that he talked. Didn't Gondek acknowledge he talked?
And had
and Daniel Smith acknowledged.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All the right things are being again. I take no pleasure in it. I take it's not done with malice. It's done with I want people to be in love with this team. I want to be in a city which loves its team from top to bottom. You're in as many rinks as I am. That little line that I threw out there is not hyperbole. Easy for me to say. It's not hyperbole. You go into a rink. Yes, there are some Flames hats and there are some Flames jerseys, but there's just as many Vegas Golden Knights, Seattle Kraken. That's the part that worries me. You go up to Edmonton and it's cult-like, right?
We love a good cult.
Well, I hadn't been to an Oiler game in years in the building.
We were close to having a cult of Daryl here at the end of last season. There's a cult of Daryl.
Oh, yeah, there is. Oh, there is.
Those people are also all hardcore Yellowstone fans.
Yeah, which he's not.
No.
Which makes no sense.
No, and you know why? It's the fake cowboys.
Yeah.
Fake cowboys. Like my family's all like cranky old farmers.
Yeah.
They were out after the first episode because the calving scene was inaccurate.
Yeah. No, you don't do that. You don't mess with rural.
But riddle me this, Rob.
Yes.
Okay. So I feel like there are a lot of parallels between this season, which is quickly marching towards the lost season for the Flames,
right,
and the bubble season. After Jacob Markstrom and Chris Tanev came in, we thought they were going to do so much for this team right off the bat, maybe like a Huberdeau and a Kadri would. And it was not happening for them. They couldn't come back. They couldn't string together any win streaks. Like they've only had a 3-game win streak this season. They've done it twice. The best stretch being the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah.
And they were not mathematically eliminated, but I specifically remember a 4-1 loss to the Winnipeg Jets. Yep. And I just said to myself, sitting in that empty dome with all those covers on the lower bowl seats and thinking, this is done.
Yeah.
I wonder if fans would have been booing then had they been in the building. And are we at a similar point now where I feel like the Boston loss was the same moment where I said this might be done for them?
Yeah, so let me unravel that onion a little bit. I go back to the playoff bubble up in Edmonton, and I just don't believe that when you take the fans out of the game, when you change the routine, and this is coming from Mr. Delicate Genius. Like, I hate it. Oh, you can't talk to a goalie on game day. Why? Oh, it'll bugger up his routine. He's a delicate genius? I hate it when they say, oh, it's March. They can't it's too close to the playoffs. They can't go into the community. Why? Well, they're delicate geniuses. I see it with junior players. I hate it. We're human beings. But having said all of that, the bubbles, just, that wasn't it. And you're so used to it. And it's funny you mentioned Winnipeg. I point to them beating Winnipeg. They were up 3-1. I can't remember which game it was. They all blur together. But Winnipeg had a breakaway and a 2-on-1 in Cam Talbot in the third period. And it should have been a Winnipeg home game. It was considered a Winnipeg home game. And I just felt like, had that building been in the MTS, I guess it's not MTS anymore, but had that been in Winnipeg, that the fans, the sea of white, all of that, or the whiteout or whatever, they would have brought that team back and it would have been a different series. I thought, the Flames were able to snuff out a third period comeback because there's no energy, and Winnipeg couldn't create energy. To the same point, then watching the Flames and watching the Stockton Heat represent in that bubble situation, and that wasn't hockey. Piping in noise wasn't hockey. I give them a complete walk on that. Yeah, there was a Stanley Cup champion and all of that, and there was some good hockey, and there was bad. It was garbage. Like, it was. I'm glad they did it. They got the sponsors. The fans had something to watch. It gave us something to talk about. But never, ever, ever, ever is anybody going to say, "Well, let's use that as the blueprint for something." It was horrible hockey, but playoff success, missed the playoffs. Playoff success, missed the playoffs. We're back into that pattern again. And I think,
but I think to like, not even the playoffs, like the bubble, like the shortened season that followed in our Zoom interviews with the players, they were so checked out. Elias Lindholm straight up told me once, I asked him and Hannafin a question. He said, like, I didn't listen.
Nope.
I was like, oh, thanks for your honesty, I guess. And I feel like we're starting to see those same like 1,000-yard stares. Milan Lucic, for whatever you think of him on the ice, is usually one of the most insightful players on the team. And there's a reason why we go to him to try to break down why things are going the way they are. I've never seen Lucic like we saw him after that 3-0 loss on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Because in every other situation, like I feel like whenever he does choose to hang up his skates and wrap up his playing career, he should be in broadcasting, because he is just such a way of taking you inside their mentality. And from what I'm seeing from him now, it's like, okay, this is like ringing a bell to me when like a Lindholm wasn't even listening to our questions. I feel like we're starting to get onto that same plane.
Well, and I'll go back to your point about the Boston game. That one will be long remembered.
Statistically, one of Jacob Markstrom's best games of the season. I would put it up there with the December 27th 2-1 loss to the Oilers. The 1-0 loss to Montreal in extras. Those were some of his best games. And look at those scores. No run support.
I was going to say, isn't that the problem? You just listed 3 of his best games this year, and they're all losses.
Tight losses.
Right. And last year, 9 shutouts. This team doesn't have a shutout this year. I'm baffled by it. I've seen go.
I'm not even rattled about not having a shutout. You need to find a way to win when you're trailing after 2 periods.
Yeah,
especially when you have Markstrom holding you in 1-0 with 7 minutes left.
Yeah, but to me, it's more just it's how dramatic it is. You know, they were the top defensive top save percentage of goaltending goal. I can't remember, but
they're right behind Carolina for the Jennings
last year. Right. Exactly. This year, 3rd from the bottom. Right. I've seen individuals go. Connor Hellebuck was no screaming hell after he had his Vezina caliber season. He's rebounded. I have no reason to think both of them won't rebound. And the crazy part is it's a bit of a situational conversation too, because we're only 3 weeks removed from putting Dan Vladar up on a pedestal and going, look, you know, he might set the Flames record for points in consecutive games, right? He was, I don't know if he was on a heater, but he was getting wins, right? It's bizarre. It's ugly. I don't have the answers for it. If I was a betting man, I would go back to them next year. I just don't think they could repeat this. But to your point, you know, Thursday was the no run game for me. Thursday was he gave you a great performance. And if you can just get 3 goals, you're winning that hockey game. And then, you know, Minnesota, it's all a cumulative effect. They were
at least against Boston, they were getting chances.
That's right.
And they did deserve to win that game.
Yeah.
Against Toronto, their offense, their pressure dried up in that third. They were
but they didn't believe anymore. They didn't believe. After the Boston game, they didn't believe. And it's fans, it's media, it's coaches, it's general managers, it's players, it's front office people. You can only have so many Rangers games. How good was that Rangers game? Oh, they were awesome in that Rangers game. They lost. How good were they in that Boston game? They were better than Boston. They lost. Markstrom lost, but great. Lost, but great. It begins to creep into your head. We know that this is not a cohesive dressing room to begin with. We know that.
But at least they have an identity.
They do have an identity as a non-cohesive dressing room.
Their identity is, as Blake Coleman so succinctly put it, a great team that cannot win.
Yeah.
I almost wonder, like, I feel like when you sometimes have, like, sometimes teams just need like that plastered up on the wall material, something to motivate you. I feel like sometimes a way that Daryl tries to create success is by creating an us versus them mentality. And a lot of coaches do that.
Okay.
I think sometimes he takes pot shots at the media. Whatever, do what you do.
Well, the whole Jacob Pelche thing was a pot shot at the media.
Completely.
Right? Yeah.
Completely. But I think he does that maybe sometimes to try to create a more insular feeling among his players, to create the us versus them. And then they can see like, oh man, like a lot of these guys don't actually want to see us suck.
Yeah.
Pretty supportive. You don't get into this job to like railroad a team. It's like, we want to cover a Stanley Cup run too.
Yep.
It's not fun to watch someone kind of crumbling in front of you.
Yep.
So that doesn't work. All right, maybe take a couple pot shots at the players. Maybe one of the players will be the one to lock the door and say, screw this.
Yep.
This is what we're going to do. And just none of it has stuck. And it's just created a complete nightmare.
It has.
With a few really bright individual spots.
Yes, it has. I have 0 Stanley Cup rings. I do have a SJHL championship and an Nanaivik Cup ring, but I have 0 Stanley Cup rings. Daryl has 2. So I understand when I am critical of the coach, there is a very easy fallback position to, what do you know? He's the one that makes decisions. I like Daryl. I feel like every time you criticize Daryl, you have to say, I like Daryl. I like Daryl. I really do. I enjoy his company. He's always been good to me. I've learned so much from him. And for those of you who don't know, Daryl was analytics before analytics. Like back in 2004, he was using analytics. So don't give me the backwards farmer routine.
And a side story about cup rings. One of my favorite live team moments was Al Coates giving Ed Whalen, surprising him with a Stanley Cup ring on air.
Yes. Yes.
That was
Do you have that at Global?
What's that?
Do you have that at Global? Did you put that out recently on?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
That was one of the gems I found in the basement with the Betacam tapes that we've been restoring.
Al Coates is a good dude. I love Al. Al's going to be on this show. He just doesn't know it yet. But my point, I go all to that extreme. I still believe Daryl's wrong not to have a captain on this team.
I think we know who the captain is on this team.
Daryl. Daryl's a captain. No, he was in 2004. He was in 2004. It's how he organizes his benches. That's how he runs his team. That's okay. That's okay. I don't like it. I don't like it. I think it deadens the accountability a bit for the players. I think you've seen Coleman, Backlund, Tanev, Huberdeau, Kadri. I think all you would know this better than I. I'm just going off your reporting and what I've seen from you. Like it's your fault. But there's guys who make them. There's guys who make themselves accountable. It's not like they're running around pointing fingers. That's not the point. But I don't like that part of it. I think
the Flames like throw themselves on the sword too much though. Like they're not that quick to pump each other up when things go right. But everyone is really quick because it is easy to be self-deprecating. But I almost wonder if we're going to take it all the way back to round 2 of playoffs last year.
Yeah.
If Calgary, like if Chris Tanev doesn't get hurt, but also after winning that first game, they almost let them back in it. The Flames were so hard on themselves after. What if they had a little more swagger and said, whatever, we still rolled them?
But that was their
coach. See how many goals we scored?
But that was their coach, right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly the message the coach would have delivered after that game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the brilliance of Daryl was game 1 against Vancouver in 2004 when he didn't say anything to that team. And they went in, they lost 5-3 to the Vancouver Canucks. And then he said to them, do I have your attention now? And they proceeded to go and win that series in 7. He's not a dumb man. He's not, but it's not working right now. And I would throw.
He's still waiting to see who on the team is going to finally snap and say they've had enough. Who is going to block that door shut and say Daryl can't come in? Who is going to call a players only meeting and say, no, none of us are doing interviews tonight? Because they have previous years.
I guess, but the guys that would are probably allies. There's the old line in baseball, the old manager line in baseball, right? 9 guys that, my job is to keep, the 9 guys that are okay with me away from the 9 guys that hate me. Right. I just think that, to me, I don't think he has to go. I just think it has to be the system needs to adapt, and the players and the coach need to adapt. I go back to the Matthew Phillips, and I know this, Matt Phillips. If you're watching, please go somewhere next year and light it up so I don't look like an idiot. And he's not going to be here, and I hope he goes somewhere and lights it up. I think this team would have been better with Matt Phillips in the lineup. Having said that, I don't know where you would have played him right now with Pelche. So one begets the other, but Pelche didn't start for 6 games. they needed to pull the pin a little quicker on that decision. They needed more skill in this lineup a little quicker. And I'm wondering what we're going to see the rest of the way. I don't think we're going to see Matt Phillips for the sake of seeing Matt Phillips, but I wonder if we see Dustin Wolf at some point.
I will say I'm a huge Jacob Pelche fan. I first met him back in Moncton, New Brunswick, and he was playing with the Wildcats, and he was just so similar to what he is now. Very bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, a little bit of an edge to his game, but there's just an exuberance that he never lost. And even when things are bad now, even when he's not the guy who comes out for interviews when we're out there for morning skate and practices, he's still like buzzing around the room, just chatting with people and catching up. And the energy that you see when he scores or he's pointing to somebody, he's like, that was all you. Like, he brings that off the ice too. And I think there's really something to be said to that.
Oh, there's value in that.
Dustin Wolf, I do think if they're mathematically eliminated, bring him up, sure. He needs to have a good stretch of games. And we need to remember that even though he has succeeded, he's gone beyond succeeding at every level so far. There is going to be an adjustment period. Do not forget that his first pro games were not good. His first games in Stockton were after World Juniors when he won gold as part of that tandem with Spencer Knight. He had those 3 Stockton games that were rough.
Well, I called the first one, which was really rough. Like 4 goals on 7 shots rough. And then by the end of that series against Toronto, he stoned them. I mean, you're absolutely right.
Time.
No, but Cami, it's not about bringing him up for the sake of bringing him up to see if he can win games. It's a development thing. And it's actually using Daryl's strategy, which is
up, down, up, down.
Well, your first year when you come out of junior college, you play in the American Hockey League. The second year, you get a taste of the NHL. The third year, you come up and down, and eventually you just stick. It worked for David Moss, worked for Eric Nystrom, it's worked for Pelche. That's all I'm looking for Wolf, is just to get that taste, because you're exactly right. And he's going to come up with that dreaded of all meteorological phenomenons. He's short. He's a small goalie. He can't win. I know.
Actually, you want to know what truly the worst thing about Dustin Wolf is?
Yes, I want to know what the worst thing is.
Yeah, no, this is on the word of his teammates. This is coming from Mr. Matthew Phillips and Mr. Jacob Pelche. The worst thing about playing with Dustin Wolf, he has a habit of eating the stinky yogurt before games.
I heard that.
It's some kind of Greek yogurt, but apparently he can't find it in Canada. But Phillips actually thought he was doing it on purpose. He thought he was just messing with him at a certain point down in the States. He's like, this is disgusting. What is it? But when you got a routine, you got a routine. And especially he can't find it in Canada. So
he can't
problem solved for his teammates.
We will get Ryan Pike on the program. We'll ask him.
Actually, we should ask him, what was the brand? I want to know.
Of yogurt.
Yeah.
All right. Let me write that down.
Journalism.
Speaking of which, Cami, tell me about your Saturday. Walk us through Cami Kepke's Saturday for me.
All right. Well, you panic and don't sleep because there's so much to do. First of all.
Okay.
Yeah. You wake up. It was a very busy day, especially in university sports. My big thing is just trying to cover as much local as we can because, TSN Sportsnet, it's not their mandate. They're not going to be at a lot of the community games. Right. They got their stuff. They got their rights holder stuff. Yep. So about 11 o'clock on, we were down at the Jack Simpson Gymnasium doing sidelines for the Canada West Women's Basketball Championship for the first time in 22 years. The banner's coming back to Alberta. Will it hang in the Saville Center? Will it hang in the Jack Simpson Gymnasium? Going to the Saville Center, but Calgary's still going to nationals, so keep tuning into that. So great ball. So sidelines for that. Post game interviews really quickly for Canada West and Global after. Rip back to the station, write highlights for the Briar. Other hockey games going on in the city. Get teed up for game 2 of the Dinos versus Alberta in the men's hockey championship. Slap a little makeup and lipstick on, and you get on that desk and you start anchoring and repeat as soon as that show is done. There are some days where you actually have to schedule in your pee break.
Okay.
Or a time to cry.
But you're not. Well,
when it's all
I was going to say,
it's like if this day is going to come off the rails.
Yeah.
If you need a 5-minute break, it has to be here.
Okay. But aren't you missing something there? Didn't you go to FDB?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, there is that.
Well, I was starting to put together highlights for the 11 o'clock show. And I was looking at it. It was 4-0 for Alberta. I was like, I don't know if Mark Howell is going to be super up for talking after this one. And then it was 4-2. And I'm like, oh, no, they're coming back. I got to get down there. So, rip across the city to and you're still like kind of dictating notes into your phone for what you need to throw into what you're writing that night, and then trying to get there in time to see them tie it up 4-4, goes to overtime. Not great for deadlines. Grab your post after and get back.
And that was your Saturday.
Yes.
And then you were back there yesterday.
Yes.
Tell me about that game, because anybody who might have caught a piece of it, what's sad to me about that game, and our dear friend Eric Francis tweeted it out, and he's right. Like, it is a great level of hockey. It just is. It always has been. The women's game, the same thing. It's elevated. It's a great brand of hockey, but it doesn't get the attention.
We're going to come back to the women's side.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I just want to talk about the atmosphere at Father David Bauer yesterday.
It was amazing. That was the greatest atmosphere I've ever seen at Father David Bauer, right up there with the exhibition game against Team Ukraine just before the Winter University Games.
Yeah.
But what's crazy about this Dinos team is we were not expecting them to be this powerhouse. We knew they would be good, but Coach of the Year, Mark Howell, told me right before the final, at the start of the year, he pointed at the banner hanging in that arena, and it says 1996. Last time the Dinos had a conference title.
Yeah.
Said this year. And they started off pretty average. They were pretty good. There were some stinker nights. One of them was against the Saskatchewan Huskies. One of them was also against the Golden Bears at FDB. And then they go on a 23-game winning streak. They hadn't lost a game since October 14th.
Yep.
It's a Canada West record, and it turns out U Sports doesn't even count these streaks. But talking to historians at schools across the country, this is the third most dominant team in university sports going back to the 60s. So they get the bye in the first week of playoffs, come in against Saskatchewan. They lose game 1. All of that, and you are 60 minutes away from having your season just done.
Yep.
They come back, and then, it goes all the way to the game 3, and this team just found a way. They're trailing 1-0 after 40 minutes, and the game winner, actually, there was a crazy bounce. The puck came off the Zamboni doors right in front of the net, and it's not top shelf anymore. It's upper shelf. Since Tyson Upper scored scored the game tying goal. And then with 3.5 minutes left, set play off the faceoff, Max Patterson gets it to Josh Mazer, and that was it. Like, that place erupted. It was just so cool to see. And it's an underappreciated level of hockey. And we're seeing more and more, not just with UFC, but with all Canada West teams. These guys are going on to pro after.
Yep.
Riley Sawchuk was going pro as soon as his playoffs were done with Mount Royal. He was one of the last cuts from Seattle Kraken camp.
Yep.
And it's $17 to go as an adult.
Yep. Well, we had Brody Dupont on, the head coach of the Cardiff Devils of the Elite Ice Hockey League, Great Britain's hockey league, and he said that's where they're recruiting. They're recruiting out of U Sports and Canada West. And you're right. I think Sawchuk had a goal in his debut for the Grand Rapids Griffins.
And over in the UK, they also just picked up a Banff product, Ryan Barrow, who scored the game-winning goal for the Denver Pioneers to win the NCAA title last year. He's off across the pond, injured right now. But
right.
Great
so again, speaks to the caliber. I know Riley Stotts and Dakota Krebs, a couple of former hitmen, lots of Western hockey.
It's not a Western Canadian hockey game unless there's a Krebs playing.
Right. Well, that's right.
Rule.
But their comment was this was the most fun they've had playing hockey, just because of the way Mark Howell and his coaching staff have handled that team.
Well, look at guys like Colson Gengenbach, who didn't get a sniff in the dub, kind of lower end AJHL, and he had to fight his way onto that team. And now he scored 2 goals at the Crowchild Classic in front of 10,000 people.
Yeah.
He's a contributor on this team. Captain Noah King, he played for Canada for the very first time this year and scored and got a gold medal at the Winter University Games.
Yep.
Like, big things are happening. And on the women's side too, Calgary is going to be a murderer's row in a couple of years with Carla McLeod at the helm.
Yeah.
Unless she gets scooped up by the national team. But if
she would do both, wouldn't she?
Yeah.
Right?
True. She could. She's so players love her.
I
saw her at one of the Dinos, the men's playoff games, and I was catching up with her. And you know what? Her team had just been eliminated. They were still within the realm of Bender week. But like, think about it, if you were a college player, if you saw your coach at a game and you were like really tying one on, would you be like, would you be hiding? They were making a beeline to go see her. They wanted her over there with them. They love Carla. And I wonder how many players she's told to go to the States who will now be staying here because they want to play for her.
Well, and what I like about it is, meanwhile, Mount Royal's women are off to Montreal, right? Scott Rivette and his
Caitlin Ross had such a great playoffs. Unbelievable goalie. Athena Hawk had a great year. Tatum Amy, Canada West Player of the Year. There's just so much talent. And these players on both sides they do a ton in the community as well.
Yeah.
I know you see.
Oh, I know.
See so
I know. I see them all the time.
Yeah,
I see them all the time. You're absolutely right. But I'm really excited about it.
Because Tatum coaches in the AFHL as well. She's an assistant coach there.
Yeah. So giving back. Well, good launch point for us. What are you hearing, or are you hearing anything about the PWPHA's announcement that is forthcoming that everybody is assuming is the announcement of a new league with I guess a CBA being worked out?
Yeah, just got to be hopeful.
Right.
Like, I feel like things have maybe tipped a bit here where more people are aware of the level of talent that is especially focused in Calgary. Like, remember when Rebecca Johnson thought she was retiring?
Yep.
And it's just casual all-star.
Yep.
Casually doing development work with the Flames. It would be great to have a team here and have them really get the appreciation they deserve, because it was heartbreaking even when the Inferno folded right after winning.
Yep.
And then they had to fight just to make sure the trophies weren't being sold.
Yep. Oh no, it's the last decade for women's hockey, the last 6 years of women's hockey has been really, there's a book in there. And there's the surface stories, and then there's under the surface stories. I am
my favorite under the surface.
Yes,
stories.
Please.
It involves a good Albertan, Emryn Smashmeyer, and a wonderful defenseman by the name of Aaron Ambrose.
Yep.
We go back to 2018. Both of them got cut from the Olympic team. Aaron was really not in a good place. She's been pretty open that she was struggling really hard at the time, and she considered quitting hockey. Emryn also had gone out to Montreal to play there for Le Canadien, and she said, come out here. I've really found another love for the game. We can build something here. Yep. And they did pretty good.
Yeah.
But they lost in the final.
Yep.
And Aaron told me about them. They were sitting in the Zamboni room just crying, and they made a pact with each other that they were going to make it back to the national team, and they both did in Beijing.
Yep.
They both got their gold. And if you want to know something about leadership, Aaron still gets a text every now and then. As we all know, mental health is a journey. She still gets a text every now and then that just says, how's your heart doing?
Right.
From a little someone named Marie-Philippe Poulin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's frustrating to me, and easy for me to sit in my pulpit and cast aspersions, but let's talk about the National Hockey League and their role in all of this. They have been there all along and said, we want a women's game, but we're not going to get in the middle. We're not going to, and we've got, I apologize, Premier, what are we calling the PHF? Thank you. Yeah. And they are, listen, PHF, I thought was the weaker sister. Is not. Just recently doled out $175,000 a year contract. That's not bad. That's almost American Hockey League money, right? Needs, eventually it'll grow from that. They're a going concern. And yet we have this other league that's going to start up. And I don't know. I feel like somehow if the NBA played a role in the WNBA, why can't the NHL play a role, and why do they wait for one league and all? It just seems like, and I know the internal politics of all of this. There is internal politics. There's internal politics. But for the betterment of the game, somebody's got to stand up and lead. It
sucks to think that you have to wait for one side to fail to build something up, for sure. And I've asked Gary Bettman about this. I asked him at the start of playoffs last year when he was here.
Okay.
Like, all right, are you guys going to step in here at all? Because the PWHPA had just had a pretty successful run here.
Yeah.
And he still said, like, we are not touching this unless they are on the same page. And there have been continued meetings between the PWHPA, led by Jana Hefford, and the PHF, which has had some, management turnover in the past couple of years as they rebranded and added new teams like the Toronto Six. I don't know what's going to break the stalemate there. I'm not going to pretend I'm smart enough or have the insight for that one.
I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Kristen Haig, the general manager of the Calgary Inferno, just after the CWHL folded. And, what worries me a little bit, and I brought this up last week with Akeem Malou, and I brought it up again with Brent Dodginghorse, that sometimes we get so focused on the top end that really it's the base of the triangle that we need to worry about, that we need to make sure that we're getting players into the league. I'm not 100% sure that a Calgary team with teams in Eastern Canada works because of travel and all those sort of things, the costs and everything. Now, we'll get to costs in a second here.
But you have so many players who are already based here because of the
correct.
national team.
And that's why it makes so much sense, right? I get that part.
The other thing that is an issue.
But is there another way of creating a second tier, of creating, almost a European model where, teams out here would play in a league, but then would also play in a Champions League or something like that? I don't have, we were just having that conversation that I wonder if, I go back to the days of the Edmonton Chimos and the Oval Extreme, and I'm not calling those the glory days of women's hockey. I'm not. They were important, but that seemed like a little bit more reasonable travel than what worries me could be coming, right? And that, again, you're putting that financial strain right out of the get-go on the backs of this league and its players.
What worries me on the financial side, this is solely on Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
Times are tough. Mm-hmm. People only have so much money in their entertainment budget. The market's getting pretty saturated for pro teams. It's kind of like pick your sport. Pick your sport. Yeah.
You betcha.
And there's something to be found. And we have a lot of new teams that are getting off the ground and I hope do well. Like you want to see everyone succeed, bring championships to the city. Then we can knock down Edmonton's sign and make a new one for us.
They don't have that sign anymore. They got rid of it. They got rid of it. City of Champions. Yeah, they got rid of it.
They did.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I haven't been up to Edmonton.
I think it's Tampa
time.
now or something like that. Isn't Tampa City of Champions or something? By the way, Calgary Surge owner Jason Ribeiro in studio on Friday, so we will be having.
Just hired a coach. Didn't say who.
Didn't
but
say.
He told me. Yep.
Okay.
Contract signed.
Today, as we're talking about, Carla McLeod and UFC and MRU going to a national, we're talking about the PWPHA. Great timing to have you on. Two stories that are business stories that I'd like to run by you. As we know, and now do we know, did Canadian Soccer and the women's team come to an agreement on interim funding? Okay. And the reason I say that is Canadian Soccer said they did. And then I understand the women came out and said, well, we're not there yet. Anyway, there was another story today that said they're still working on a CBA, but they have an interim funding piece in place. The story, though, is that GE has expressed to Canadian Soccer that they're very concerned about this ongoing battle with Canadian women's soccer and took the unprecedented step, I think unprecedented, of adding an extra $100,000 to their sponsorship and saying that is earmarked for the women's national team. I know that some other sponsors of soccer had said the same thing, that not necessarily upped it, but said they had some major concerns, and that was an issue for Soccer Canada. Canadian Tire, this will, and I'm fascinated by your thoughts on this. Canadian Tire commits to gender equality sponsorship by 2026. What they spend on high-performance male, they will spend on high-performance female. That seems rather significant to me.
Absolutely. And I think we're starting to see a rise of corporate sponsors dictating where the money is used. And we started to see it with the World Junior scandal with Hockey Canada. Teams saying there was great worry at first that, all these sponsors were pulling out. And it's like, all right, but who's really going to feel the pinch? Probably the women's team, probably the para team, the younger teams.
Yep.
And now I think those companies realize that as well. So they said, we are pulling funding from this team.
Yep.
Any money we give you is now going towards women's and para programs.
Yeah. So I believe there's 5 I'm having a little fun at the expense of our favorite city in the East. They have identified 5 different areas. Founding partner Project 8, which is the women's professional soccer league, which I believe does include Foothills.
Yep. There are going to be 8 teams across Canada. The confirmed teams are Calgary and Vancouver, which is funny because Steph Labbe.
Yep.
Former Minister of Defense.
Right. And staying active, by the way.
Playing beer league in Calgary, I hear. It's crazy because I remember meeting Diana Matheson for the first time and after seeing her, the goal in 2010, astounding. And she's smaller than me. She's tiny. And that woman is a force.
Yep.
But being there with her when she was announcing that Project 8 would have a team in Calgary at Foothills, it was in the same building where Steph Labbe tried out for Foothills of the PDL, made the team, and then the league said,
You can't play.
I
know.
So it was very cool to just see that moment kind of come full circle. But yes, more teams will be announced. They're hoping to attract national team members, players who've previously gone to the States, and a lot of local talent that right now is going to the NCAA, sometimes youth sports, but don't really have another place to go. You look at Montana Leonard set a Canada West scoring record last season.
Right.
And she had to go to Tanzania.
Yeah, to play.
Yeah. Pardon me. No, she didn't go to. She went to Tasmania. My bad.
Well, still not around the corner, and not a direct WestJet flight. So that's one. Premier partner of the Commercial Women's Sports Initiative, which is interesting. I have no idea. Supporting partner of the WNBA game that will be in Toronto.
Sold out. Hey.
Yes, that's what I saw. Toronto Metropolitan University. Is that Ryerson? Toronto Metropolitan?
I think so.
Yeah.
You'll rebrand.
Partner in the Future of Sport Lab. They're going to do that. And then presenting partner of the ESPN W Summit in Canada just before that WNBA game. So a lot of out east stuff. But presenting sponsor of the Women's Pro League. This is fairly significant. And I think you mentioned it a little while ago. I'm not 100% sure that this is the last we're going to see of this. I think this is the direction we're going.
Absolutely. Funny you mentioned basketball too. We had the Plouffe sisters were kicking around on the weekend too, because so many of the top basketball players in Canada train in Edmonton.
Yep.
We got great facilities there for that.
Yep. Facilities, you say? It's like we could use a few of those around here. By the way, speaking of facilities, we are in the Oodle Noodle studio. Local, love, delicious. Since opening their first store back in 2005, Oodle Noodle has been all flavor and just the right amount of weird. 2 locations, 1244 17th Avenue Southwest, 105 Main Street North in Airdrie. Pickup and delivery. I am pro noodle. You are pro noodle? You like noodles?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Noodle advocate.
Oh, are you a noodle advocate? Okay. Well, I'm pro noodle and you're a noodle advocate. I think
personally,
we're in the right place.
Rice noodle. I'm a big rice noodle guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Gal. You're a big rice noodle gal. Right?
I feel like they're pretty interchangeable.
Are they?
Who needs labels?
Okay, no problem. I'm not labeling.
I
said this is an inclusive program. If you want to be a pro noodle guy, you are a pro noodle guy.
You know what? David Bowie said, "Ladies, gentlemen, and others," and I was like, "I like that."
We're good enough.
I'm gonna hang on to that.
Absolutely. Ryan Pike from Flames Nation is going to join us here in a little bit. Just before I let this go, are you bullish on women's sport? Are you, given the opportunity, would you want to work sidelines of an NBA game or a WNBA game?
Probably WNBA, I have to say. There are certain sports where I just truly enjoy covering the women's side more.
Yep.
I have to say the big one for me is volleyball.
Okay.
That's largely my background.
Oh, is it?
Curling as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are certainly sports where I just way more enjoy covering the women's side sure.
We hosted the Hockey Inspires coaching day for Hockey Calgary in October, and Carla McLeod stole the show. Like, she was outstanding. Tree wasn't bad. Dave King's pretty good too, but Carla McLeod stole the show, and she was asked the question, if she wanted to be on an NHL staff. She goes, "No, I want to be the head coach in a women's league, like in the top women's league." I love that. We are and I've said this before, and I think you know why I say this, the most important person in sports right now for me in sports broadcasting is Sandra Persina, because she's the voice of the Calgary Wranglers, and she's getting seat time, and she's doing it the right way, and not the right. No, I shouldn't say the right way, but you know what I mean, right? Like, wasn't yanked.
I think people in Calgary really connect with people who pay their dues and are willing to do the grind, and Sandra grinds.
Right. Well, so do you too, right? You two grind. Good. But I'm proud of both of you. But I'm proud of her because I think, again, would you agree that it doesn't help anybody when somebody plucks somebody and says, "Hey, look, we're diverse now because we just put them at the top of the mountain."
Yeah.
And we check the box. Again, back to the bottom of the pyramid. We need to be giving opportunities. They need to be getting opportunities and things like that. She's another one that I think, she told me she'd rather call, high level women's soccer or high level women's hockey. That again, that to me is I see that as a fundamental shift, because I think initially it was, we want women in sport. That means they've got to do the guys' games. Now what I'm seeing is we want to be in sport, but we want to do the women's games to raise the profile, which I think is an exciting place to be. Does that make any sense?
Completely. And to students in broadcasting school now, I remember I went to SAIT here. So
did you finish? Did you finish?
I did finish.
I didn't finish. I went to SAIT.
I did get my diploma.
I didn't. I just did the 1 year.
But it was a dogfight there because there were so many people who wanted to do sports, and all these guys who were like an affiliated player for one WHL game just thought they had all the right to everything, and they were only going to call hockey games.
Yep.
It limits you. So it was like, it was like I wasn't a big basketball wasn't my background, lacrosse wasn't my background, but it was like you just had to fight for those opportunities and figure it out. A good broadcaster can do their homework, look for the storylines. There weren't a lot of people that did that. So like for students coming up now, like I would encourage them, like the guys can go cover the women's sports too. Brendan Parker did a really great job with that. Formerly of Global, now with the Flames. He was great at the PWHPA Dream Gap Tour that was in Calgary. And we need to have more young men aspiring to cover women's sports too, because it's a really great place to be. And those stories of like people like Marie-Philippe Poulin and Erin Ambrose, why wouldn't you want to cover that? Why wouldn't you not want to cover Marie-Philippe Poulin? Why would you not want to cover Christine Sinclair, Janine Becky, Julia Grosso, the next gen coming up?
That to me is because I'm getting old now. I remember the Chimos, and I remember then the Oval Extreme, and how unique and crazy and weird and that was. And
I don't have anything to really draw on like that. I'm from a really small town. There was no girls hockey. I got into hockey because I had like my cousin played, my dad played. I had 1,000 billet brothers.
Yeah.
So I got in by doing play-by-play.
Right.
And I always thought it was like NHL or bust. And I used to volunteer for Hockey Canada. And my first big event for them was the Hockey Canada Foundation Gala in Vancouver after the Sochi Olympics. And they were doing the Order of Hockey in Canada inductions. And it was Claire Drake, Steve Yzerman, and France St. Louis. And I thought, like, Steve Yzerman, Kootenai guy, technically, we are claiming him.
Technically.
Yeah. His grandma used to live next to my auntie. But I thought, like, seeing Steve Yzerman, I was like, oh my God, Steve Yzerman's here.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about his speech. I remember everything about France St. Louis. She was talking about growing up in Quebec and girls not being allowed to play and tucking her hair up in a hat so no one would know, and playing and going on to really change the game for so many women. And now just even seeing more games for like the Women's World Championship in hockey being broadcast. I see my dad in his late 50s tuning in to watch Finland and the US. Like Canada's not even playing, it's there. So it's funny. Like it seems like a big shift now where some people think we're just shoving it down their throats, but it's like, this is going to seem so normal for the next generation. And
change is
very exciting.
Change is hard. And it's easy to be a dummy. Having said that, there's no better rivalry in hockey right now. None. I mean, there is an issue. It's not to suggest that there aren't issues. We definitely need to find a way to fast track some more.
We've arrived when we can talk about the teams and say you're doing and start to criticize a little bit. Like,
right? No, but it's
no,
but I don't want to.
Why is this the goal you went with? We can it's gonna get to a point
No.
where it's not just like, isn't this nice? Isn't this great? It's gonna be like, all right, we're all here now. Let's talk about being good and being great.
The most here's the thing that I'm looking forward to. The most important thing that can happen in hockey is that Czechia wins another medal at a World Cup very soon, or at the World Championships, because we saw Sweden upset and we've seen Finland once with a hot goalie. What we need the other countries now to raise their water.
And that 14-year-old from Finland?
Yeah. Right?
If I could whistle, I would.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can whistle, but it's not going to help. All right. Let's do this. We're not done with you. You're not going anywhere, right? You're going to stick around? Okay.
I'm here. I think I live on this couch now. It's a good spot.
It's a nice spot, right? I got something I'm supposed to read. What am I?
Studio is bigger than my first
here. No, what are we? I had a liner here to read. Where am I? Screw it. You want to sponsor this show? We'd love you to sponsor this show. Go to robkerr.ca/sponsorship. You'll find the information. Send us a note. We'll send the Wolverine after you. We'll find a creative way to get you involved in this program. You can be part of it. And here's another note. If you want to play an active role in women's sport, I might know somebody who could do a podcast. Just saying. I might. And now we lost Pike. Another show. I've got to do another show. Joining us here on the program is the guy, again, talking about not sleeping. He did the mailbag today. Ryan Pike, our Flames insider, joins us here on a Monday. How are you, sir?
I think I've finally recovered from the weekend. I think my weekend was almost as busy as Cami's.
All right, hold on, Ryan. I've kicked something out with my big clumsy feet. Do I need to do anything with him? No? Okay. Leave it with you.
Wait, what's better, a pike or a cutthroat trout?
Pike caught in the north, not in the south, because it's mushy. If it's caught in the north and it's very cold water, it tastes almost like a fillet. Cutthroat trout I wouldn't eat because they're endangered in most places, so I'd rather them breed, right? I would put them back. I would not put a pike back. I'd put him back, but I wouldn't put a pike. Yes, this Ryan Jones.
I would say the pike is the ugliest of the fish. Not the case for our dear friend Ryan Pike, though. Thank goodness.
Well, I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this crew. I'm looking at this crew.
Talking trash.
No, I'm looking at this crew, and you got a sucker fish in one corner. You've got a pike in another corner, and you've got a tropical pretty fish, a parrotfish. Right? There we go.
Oh,
there
good.
we go.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
I was going to say my weekend, no one's as busy as Cami, but I aspire to try to be a close second at times. And that was a busy from like Thursday through Sunday. It seemed like it never stopped.
He's talking to you.
Oh, I can't hear him.
You can't hear him.
Do you see my headphones?
Oh my gosh. That's on us. Of all of this, of all the problems.
Why might I want to hear?
And it's just a great line, and I'm like, go ahead, respond. So what?
I'm sorry for killing your thunder.
No, don't.
Yeah, see, Rob, this is what happens when we try to be nice to Cami.
No, this is what happens when I try to do too many things at once, right? And I couldn't get your audio, and then I get your audio, but I don't have headphones for Cami, who's got. By the way, I have not complimented you because I'm a pretty reserved guy. But the Nordiques toque,
thank you.
Yeah.
People have two reactions to it. They love it or they get really upset. To which I have to say, like, they can't
upset.
They get upset. They're like, I mean, covering the Flames doesn't mean that you have to be like a Flames fan. And though I'd like to see them succeed because it's fun to cover playoffs and all that. But people get upset about it. I'm like, they can't hurt you. They're gone. I found this at a flea market in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and I'm never giving it up.
So the good news is, if I have this correct, Ryan can hear you, so you can respond to that. Yeah, you can respond to that.
I can hear Cami. She just can't hear me.
That's right. Well, then we're working on it. Don't worry about it. We got a plan in place. It's all good. I just didn't
solutions.
Didn't think this through. This is on me. But having said that, are you a fan? Because I've said this for years. I am not the last team I was a fan of, Montreal Expos. I like a lot of people. I said I like Daryl. I like a lot of the players. If the team has success, people that I like. I don't live and die with the losses like a fan does. Do you, Ryan, have a team in sport that you still live and die with the losses?
I mean, it used to be the Chicago Cubs, but I mean, once they won the World Series, I mean,
you were good. That's just all I needed,
and
right?
I think the problem was like the Ricketts family. Once they won their championship, they realized that they could still make crap tons of money without really doing anything useful with the team, and so they tore it down, and then they put all the money into redeveloping the area. So Wrigley's not the same as it used to be, and you know, it's a business that happens to involve a baseball team rather than a baseball team that's run like a business. And
well, I don't know. That's the Expos too, right? You know,
unfortunately,
to me, the only thing I cling to, no, that's not true. I cling to two things. I do believe it was in 2004. And one day when we have some time, I'll tell you my Zamboni story with Darren Pang and all of that.
And that's how we all learned about the parallax angle.
That's how we all learned about parallax angles. But I also contend 94, the Expos would have rolled over everybody, and it would have been a third straight World Series in Canada after two.
I've never seen a team with that much balance throughout their entire lineup. They could do a little of everything, and they could do everything well, and then nothing. And then
starting pitchers, they could run the bases, they could hit the off the Grissom, and oh my gosh. Anyway, I digress. Cami, can you hear Ryan now?
And we're gonna do a little bit of an audio check, and we're gonna challenge Ryan at the same time. Can you name every starting Flames goalie of the 2010s for me while I try to get your voice in my ears?
I don't think we need that much time.
Of the 2010s. Oh,
of the 2010s. Yeah, remember we thought Yoni Ordio was the future?
No one thought that, though. The only people who thought that,
I thought it was Yoni Ordio. I thought it was Yoni Ordio. I thought it was Kerry Ramo. I thought at one point it might be Danny Taylor. But I was wrong.
Danny Taylor. Hey? What a great AHL goalie.
Great AHL goalie who was born in England, by the way.
Yep. And they actually they signed him mid-season because they had a couple injuries and they ran out of healthy goalies and they had to call up somebody, and the only somebody they had available was dangerous Danny Taylor. So he got an NHL deal because he was simply around and healthy.
Yep. But he beat Vancouver 4-1.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go back, Rob, we can go back to the year of 8 goalies when the Flames. Remember that it was the year where they were, they basically spun their wheels since they traded Mike Vernon for Steve Chiasson, and the thought process at the time. I remember, they're like, I think Al Coates at the time was like, oh, don't worry, they got Ken Reggett from Pittsburgh, it'll be great, and on paper Ken Reggett made a lot of sense, and they got hurt 2 weeks in, and then. Everybody, it was like the Bermuda Triangle of goalies where everybody they tried ended up getting injured in a weird way. And then I think they ended it up in January signing Freddie Brathwaite from the national team back when they had a standing national team because he was the only person in town who was a high level goalie. So they basically, the story I was told was one of the pro scouts was just in FDB randomly saw him practicing and went, he looks pretty good. Let's take him. Yeah. And he ended up, he turned it into a pretty good NHL career. So
he did.
And I believe, who's he with now? And I remember that Freddie's working with some NHL team, but they always blur together with me which one he's with.
I know his brother Rod works for the Vancouver Canucks. Where does he work? Vegas. He works in Vegas.
Yeah, because he worked for Henderson in Vegas for a bit. So I think he's still working primarily with Hendo.
Only because we're trying to out-random each other. That year, we were driving from Estevan back to Alberta, and I was listening to the Calgary Flames and the Philadelphia Flyers, and Andrei Trefilov was winning 3-0 going into the third period and lost 4-3. He was hot garbage. So I do remember that season.
Andrei Trefilov, a 12th round pick. The Flames also brought up Igor Karpenko from the Johnstown Chiefs. Formerly the
Ty Garner,
who I believe we were joking about this in the press box. So the Flames did the Black History Month jerseys earlier this week, and they did a fantastic job with it. I love the design of the jerseys, but some of our media colleagues were joking that the pain in the butt was all the goalies or all the players on the Flames they were all wearing number 12, but they all had personalized name bars. So like say Markstrom's out there, he's wearing 12 with Markstrom and so on and so forth. And we were joking that, they should, do custom jerseys for all the, the Flames had 2 black goalies. They had,
they had
Grant Fuhr, they had Fred Brathwaite. And I chimed in, I'm like, this is Tyrone Garner erasure. Because Tyrone Garner played 1 NHL game. And then I believe he went back to junior, and then he got converted to being a forward because they had either too many goalies or he just didn't like goalie anymore, which I find fascinating. Just the idea that a guy who had already played in the NHL decided not to be goalie anymore.
He played defense in Norway Division 2. I interviewed him.
Yep. Good kid. Kid.
Oh no, it's a great story. Like, you're right. Like, if you remember, they tried to reboot Shootout on Hockey Night in Canada. And he was the Calgary Flames goalie in that. And it was all shot in the summer. And they had fake trees and a whole 9 yard. And Tyrone Garner, who was an 18-year-old kid out of the O, he was the Flames goalie in that. Oh, the memories. So much better to talk about than the Saturday game.
Well, because we go from the year of 2 goalies or the year of 8 goalies to perhaps the year of 0 goalies. Although I'll say this, after the years where we've spent probably the entire season to various degrees bitching about the goaltending.
Yes.
Holy cow, Markstrom has been so good the last week, and he's gotten 1 goal of run support.
Yep.
But the best goaltending he's given the team probably since last season when he was the runner-up for the Vezina, and 1 goal of run support.
Care to opine why?
Oh man, if I knew that, then Brad Treliving would probably corner me and try to make me tell him. I think there's just a lot of stuff going on. I mean, they're a fundamentally sound team. I was commenting to one of our colleagues during the press box on Saturday night, the idea that they're a team that there's 200 feet of ice out there, and they're pretty good for like 160, 170 feet of them, and then it's the last 10 feet right around the net on either side which is killing them. And they have the puck a lot. They manage the puck reasonably well. They get lots of shots, granted far away shots. Like their shot, their heat map at times kind of resembles a donut, and they defend reasonably well. But when they make mistakes, they're big mistakes. And when the other team makes mistakes, they haven't shown the ability to jump all over them the way they have. And I think to a certain extent, maybe it's wearing on them. I have been in locker rooms like we were in on Saturday night, but I use the term funereal on Twitter to describe the atmosphere. The guys just seem down in every sense of the word. And, I distinctly remember, I think it was the Toronto post game where Blake Coleman was asked a question about, what the team needs to do. And he's just sort of, Julian McKenzie from The Athletic asked, what do you make of this game? And he just sort of gave the 1,000-yard stare and then just sort of sighed and then started answering. And that's basically the way the season's been going. They've been doing most things well, some things very well, but the things they're doing poorly and the times in which they're doing them poorly are killing them. And, I was joking with someone, they could very much, like if you told me based on how the team is playing, hey, if they run it back to the exact same group, like hockey's weird, could they have a better result? Oh, 100%. They could, like, this kind of reminds me of, remember 14-15 where it was the Find Away Flames and, the nerds like me who follow, PDO and stuff like that. They were getting every possible bounce they possibly could get. Everything was going great. 15-16 on paper, they were a better hockey club. They added Dougie Hamilton. They were just a flat out better hockey team, and they just had no luck whatsoever. And chemistry was kind of a weird thing. Like it took them a year and a half to figure out where Dougie Hamilton fit in. They had the same problem with Travis Hamonic when they brought him in. Goaltending's always been sort of a bugaboo, but it seemed like Markstrom was the right guy. And I think I still fundamentally really like the Markstrom-Vladar tandem, but it's just so many weird little things just kill them. And it's like they can't get out of their own way at times. Yep. And I wouldn't even put the blame on the players. It's just sometimes things don't go your way and they don't have the ability to work their way out of the jams they work themselves into.
It's funny that you brought up like the heat maps and how it looks like a donut sometimes. I mentioned earlier that I go back to some parallels between now and the bubble season, not bubble playoffs, but the bubble season itself. There was a 4-1 loss to Winnipeg that didn't even mathematically eliminate them. But to me, that felt like the end. That was the end of hope. I almost feel the same way about the Boston game because looking at those heat maps, it wasn't a donut, it was a Timbit. They were right there and they just still weren't getting those bounces. And maybe that's why it felt like such a backbreaker for them.
Yeah. Well, especially like since the All-Star break, they've won 3 games. And like this, they came in the All-Star break, like they were in a position where they could play their way into it. Like they were within spitting distance, within shouting distance. They, and they had a favorable schedule. And it was just a question of, okay, can they go on a run? They had all the, if you told me, hey, Ryan, they have all the recipes in place, all the elements to go on a run, I'd say, yeah. I mean, they have a goalie who was really good last year. They have a defensive group that has been very good at times in the past. They have a forward group that have had recent success. One, the guy they just got, they have 2 new forwards on the team from last year. One of them won a Stanley Cup, and one of them set the all-time left wing assist record. On paper, this should be working, but it's just a lot of little things haven't worked. I would, if you ask me what the biggest challenge I think they've had this year is, I think the big challenge is like Huberdeau hasn't worked the way anyone, including Jonathan Huberdeau, would have wanted him to. And I think the challenge is when you have a piece that's that important not working, they have to keep moving him around to different lines to see if they can get him working, or moving other wingers around to see if they can get him working. They had him, after he missed some time in November with an injury, they threw him on Michael Backlund's line. And granted, Michael Backlund is probably the most trusted player of the Flames system because he can just do everything. Michael Backlund's one of those classic players that you can argue he has no elite areas in his game, but he has no weak areas in his game. He just, maybe if you want to criticize him, he's not a great finisher. Okay, boo-hoo. But he's good at everything else. And you put him with good players, like Mangiapane, I think, has benefited hugely in his young career from playing with Michael Backlund as much as he has. But if you said to me, how do you fix Huberdeau? I'd say, okay, throw with Backlund. That makes sense. And it worked. And then they moved him off that line because they need Backlund to be the shutdown guy. And all due respect to him, Huberdeau probably shouldn't be on that line if that's the role. And Huberdeau has sort of shown fits and starts of offensive prowess, but he still doesn't seem comfortable. They put Jacob Pelche on that line to give them a boost, and I thought Daryl Sutter had unprompted actually this morning a nice bit of praise for Pelche, just noting he was asked about sort of the changing lines by Brendan Parker, and the polite thing that he said was Jacob's been good everywhere we put him, and yeah, he has been good everywhere they put him. And I think the challenge is if you're, right now I'd say they're probably using Pelche to try to get some other guys going. And it's worrying that they're using a 21-year-old kid as sort of a catalyst when, if anything, in the past they've used Backlund as a guy who can catalyze the young guys, get them going. But they were it's good to have a Pelche to get guys going, but it's kind of a challenge when that's the trump card you have to play, right?
All right. Question for both of you. And Ryan, I'll start with you. We talked about it. I don't think I asked Cami about this earlier. Does this organization need a reboot? And if it needs a reboot, what reboot does it need?
Reboot in what sense?
You tell me. It's an open-ended question. I'll give you this. I think you said it last week, Ryan. Win one, lose one, win one, lose one. Playoffs, out of playoffs, in playoffs, out of the playoffs. Great years, bad years. Players gone. There's no continuity with his organization. There's none. And I think it's a safe organization. I don't think they take a lot of risks. I think it's an organization that has a general manager, that's on an expiring contract. So that is an opportunity, I suppose. Does this organization, in your eyes, need a reboot?
I'd say so. I'll say this. Daryl Sutter, I think, has said a lot of smart things about the market and the fan base. It's a really educated fan base. Like I had an Uber driver on my way into the rink for deadline day, and we were just chatting, and he's following the team. He knows about Coronado. He knows about he knew about and this is I think this is representative of the average fan in the city is pretty on the ball in terms of knowing what's up and what they like and what they don't like. And so I think if you're really clear with the fans about what you're doing and why, they're on board. Like they just don't want to feel like they're having the wool pulled over their eyes. So if you can, whatever happens, I think, whoever's the general manager in May, June, July, whenever they decide their forward state of affairs, just lay out what the plan is. You don't need to tell us the minutia of the plan, because I get not wanting to give up, your strategic situation. You don't want to give, too much information to the guys you're competing against. But if you say, hey guys, here's what we're trying to do. We're looking for X, we're trying to do Y. Here's, and that's your fallback. Like you and I have talked, Rob, in the past about, I thought one of the things that worked pretty well for Marinenci, to cross streams a bit, was when he ran for mayor in 2010, he had his 10 big ideas. Yep. And everything he did tied into the big ideas. And so from a comm strategy, if you want to convince folks that the mayor knows what he's doing, you can pull everything back to those big ideas. And I think to a large extent, hockey ops kind of needs to run that way too. You don't need to tell us everything, but if you have sort of a clear directive of here's what we're doing and why, then you can, anytime you do something and one of us folks goes, I don't understand what you're doing, why are you doing that? They can tie it back to the big idea. And I think it makes...
You want to see a letter like New York Rangers, Philadelphia Flyers style, and just see them put it out there?
Well, I don't know if you need something as dramatic as a letter, but I kind of like that. The idea that you're saying, hey guys,
I hate it.
Really, New York manifested their super team by just giving in and saying this is what it is.
Yeah, but I hate that whole idea of we lost, and we're sad we lost. Like, losing's part of this. You accept that.
Yeah, the losing should be towards a greater purpose. Like, as in, if the idea, if you told me, in that 14 or the 13-14 season, like the first rebuild season. I'm sorry, Jay never said rebuild, but the first
wasn't allowed to.
The new direction season. Every single loss felt like it meant something, because I've brought up that the line brawl they had in Vancouver. Like, that was an important moment for the catalyzation of the team's identity. And if you say the whole, it was like we made Mark Giordano the captain, that tells you what we think our identity is. And this is what we're doing. Like, we're bringing in kids. We're going to have Mark Giordano teach them how to be pros, Matt Station teach them how to be pros. And then we're going to do we're going to try to take some steps. It might take us a little while to get there, but here's what we're doing and here's what we're going for. Good. At least that way, if you're the average fan, you can go like, oh, are the Flames any good this year? Well, they said they're trying to do X, Y, and Z, and let's go to a game. Let's see how it goes. Because at least say this: if you're going to an AHL game right now, you know what the AHL team's all about because they win all the time. But you also know in the back of your mind they're a development organization, and their goal is to create good players for the Flames. So you kind of know what they're all about just from the basis of the existence of the league. Whereas with the Flames, it seems like, are they, are institutionally, are they content with sort of being a happy to be there playoff team?
Oh no.
Last couple of years, sometimes.
But you sent that message when you brought in Daryl, right? Daryl.
Yeah, you don't bring in Daryl Sutter to rebuild or to putt around the middle, right?
No.
But what will Daryl do, knowing that he has the extension now, barring whatever happens with the GM? You have a lot of players on expiring contracts next season.
He's getting his money, though.
You're going to have those conversations with those guys this summer to prevent another Gaudreau situation.
For the record, we mentioned
that's going to determine whether, to your earlier question, Rob, whether it is reboot time.
Backlund, Lindholm, Toffoli, Dubé, Zadorov, Hanifin, and Tanev next year. Next year, not this year, next year.
Yeah. And with the cap only nudging up a little bit, I think this is what's your 3-year plan off season? Let's say you re-up for Brad Living for another 3 years. What's the purpose of that? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish?
But did we not get a little insight? Was it not you? And I apologize, I'm not saying that accusingly, but was it not you that put the story out or posted the Friedman note about the Flames were in on Meyer?
Yeah, Flame.
So if they were in on Timo Meyer, that kind of gives you.
To be fair, they're in on everybody. They kicked out everybody.
In fairness, no, that's fair. But that gives us a little insight, does it not?
Yeah, it does. And I think the idea, they've been in on a lot of big pieces. They've been, and let's call a spade a spade. They got some big pieces. I mean, Mackenzie Weegar, a guy who was that good at the defensive side of the game, that's a big piece. Right. And Jonathan Huberdeau, if has a good summer, clears his head, hangs out at a Caribbean island for a month, and then comes back with the Cubs where it's cleared out. Because I imagine there's such a weird year for him on a personal level, going from Florida to here, especially like if you thought you were going to be in Florida forever and you thought the call you were going to get from Bill Zito is him saying, "Hey, let's start talking extension," and it was actually you're going to Calgary. I mean, yeah, I can get that sort of a kick in the teeth. So
do you remember a couple of years ago the Blues actually told Jake Allen to go home for a week?
Yep.
Yeah,
I do.
Sort himself out. I wonder why we haven't seen another team ever really do that. Or whether there would be a benefit in the long run for a player like Huberdeau, like a guy's pride too. Like maybe he doesn't want to do that, but I wonder, like players who struggle in this way, like if you gave them the option, like mental health break, go like
that was supposed. That's usually what the All-Star break is, though. That's usually what a lot of players use the All-Star break for, because like you're in the middle of the grind, and like you're basically, especially if you have like a family in market, it's basically when you're at home, you spend the first day or so getting back to home stuff and figuring out what you need to do, and then it's practice game. Then you fly away, then it's very regimented, and like your life is so regimented, pretty much for the entire season, that if you get like 8 days out of 190, 200 days to actually just decompress, that's why a lot of players don't like the All-Star game. Like they love the, they're always
but you want the time. Yeah.
Oh God, if you can get especially if you like don't get a chance to see your loved ones very much, and then you get like 9 days off. If I were them, like I'd say I would take the suspension. If the league's like, oh, if you can't play in the All-Star game, you got to miss a game. Sure, cool, whatever you need to do. I'm burnt out, and if we're burnt out on the media side, I can't imagine what the player side was.
Oh, I agreed. All right, a couple of quick hitters here with you. Anything new on the arena?
We got a meeting Friday. I assume
we do. You and me.
That's right, Rob. It's your turn to fix this mess.
And another
thing. I'll be sitting with some of my media colleagues and sort of reading a book and hoping that they are able to say anything. But they're nudging along. Gary Bettman was like, I find this kind of funny. So your best friend Gary Bettman was in town.
He was,
and he was very upbeat. Very, the weird thing is, I find this very fascinating. So there was a deal in 2019. Like there was a deal done between 2019 and the end of 2021. Yet he's saying now this is the most upbeat he's felt about it. Really? I guess I'm gonna be skeptical just by nature until we get a shovel in the ground. Like once there's a hole, they got to fill the hole with something.
Well, that's what Cami was saying. You said that before. Is that the conversations were a bit of a surprise to some people, right?
Completely.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think the fundamental issue is still like, they have a spot where they want it. They have the city has a bunch of money they would like to spend on it. The Flames have a certain amount of money they're willing to spend on it. And it's just a question of, can you find someone to come in and be your angel investor and say, here's some money, you can build the thing you want, or they have to hack like $100 million out of a budget. And I don't know if you want to value engineer something. Like if the idea that this is going to be a big piece of civic infrastructure for the next 30, 40, 50 years, do you want to be quibbling over a little bit of that kind of stuff right now? Like, for a
politician, 30 or 40 years is irrelevant. Mm-hmm. It's 3 or 4 days, 3 or 4 weeks, 3 or 4 months. That's where they're worried about, right? They're only worried about the next election. That's the reality of it. And you're right. I mean, that's where I keep coming back to a hero. Like we need somebody who's a visionary to stand up and go, this is what it's got to be, and sell us all on it, and kumbaya and link arms and God bless us and one and all, and look at what we have. But we're not there yet. Just an overall thought, Ryan, on the trade deadline from an NHL perspective. A lot has been made, and you probably got those questions in the mailbag about, did we see a fundamental shift in management of team rosters and assets with draft picks because of some of the ways general managers and teams went about their business this year?
I'll say this. It was weird, and I love weird. Like just the idea of like, how like there was so many teams that were willing to be third parties. There were so many teams willing to retain salary. There, like we saw like 3 team trades. We saw retained salary trades. We saw like, Vladislav Nemestikov got traded twice in a week. Actually, in 3 days. He basically got to San Jose. They assigned him a number, then they traded him right away. That's hilarious to me. And I just thought it was that kind of a year where it seemed like GMs were thinking, okay, the cap is what it is. Let's see if we can help each other. And for once, it wasn't just Tampa Bay being creative. Like, I think I would say this is the rest of the league learning from Tampa Bay, looking at what the Lightning were doing and Julian Breezeball and going, okay, let's just do what they're doing. If they're playing 3-dimensional chess, why isn't everybody else?
Yeah. What's coming up on Flames Nation this week? I know you did the mailbag today. There's a game in Dallas tonight. You know, it continues on, but the trade deadline does seem somewhat of a milestone in the season. What are you anticipating? What are you talking about this week?
Well, we're going to start doing a lot of we're doing our prep work for the draft, Rob. I think that's sort of a good indication of where things are going.
Okay.
You usually see our internal Slack. We're starting to debate over, do you think they're going to do a center in the first round? Do you think they're going to a defenseman in the first round? There's a good Swedish defenseman, Axel Sandin Pelika. Right shot.
There's one spot in the Flames prospect pool that might be lacking a little bit.
There's a couple European right shot defensemen who've played pro this year in Europe who I'm just saying, they seem pretty flamsy. They've seen pretty flamsy, but we'll see. So we're going to start getting into that. And, we got a lot of Wranglers going on. A lot of the Flames play 4 games this week, and we'll see how they go because, the fat lady has yet to sing, for lack of a better term. I think she's doing her warm-ups, though. She's definitely, doing her vocal exercises and getting ready to sing. And, it's the question of, I think right now the Flames, their maximum points is 100-something points. So do they want to make a run at that, or are they content with sort of making their draft position a little bit better?
It's not dull. It's not over. And when we talk next Monday, I'm very curious to see where they are because today, 7 points back with a couple of teams in front of them now. Where will they be in a week? Ryan, great work leading up to the trade deadline and through. We'll catch you at flamesnation.ca. Thanks for joining us today, pal.
Thanks, Sammy.
I think the most 2023 Flames way this season could end is being mathematically eliminated on a night off.
Wouldn't it be going to game 82 with a mathematical chance and then getting blown out?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I mean, I don't really want to have that debate.
I
would rather be positive. I would rather be positive. We are live in the Oodle Noodle studio, Rob and Cami with you this afternoon. We bring the heat. Try the butter chicken mac and cheese, Kung Pao noodles, Bangkok Pad Thai Classic, vegetarian and gluten-friendly options as well. Pick up and delivery at the 2 locations, 1244 17th Avenue Southwest, 105 Main Street North in Airdrie. Let's talk about you. Where are you at? Fairly significant announcement made last week by your parent company, and we've begun to hear some of the fallout and the impact. How does it impact Cami Kepke?
It's been a pretty tough week for those of us in the global system. A number of really talented online journalists have been laid off, but here in Alberta, there will be no more local sportscasts going forward. I think we have until the end of the month. So for me, that means that with no sportscast here, Moses Woldu will be our sports reporter for the time being. It looks like I am being moved back to the news side of things, which is my background. I've done news for a long time before I was able to do full-time sports, particularly a lot of court, a lot of crime.
Yeah.
Didn't love it, but no. But what really hurts me about this one is that we could cover local teams that the TSNs and the sports nets do not have the capacity to cover.
Yeah.
And as an anchor, I had the ability to make sure we were going to have women's sports in every cast. And it wasn't just about the Flames. We were able to go cover the crap out of the Max when Little League Baseball was here, even just AFHL playoffs and university, because there's so many great stories there that you only find by being around there. Like there was a player, Dylan Kalambe, on the Dinos basketball team. He had a heart transplant last year and he's still able to play university ball. Stories like that are really important. And I worry that they're going to get lost in the mix without that local coverage going forward. But some things don't change, and I'm not going to stop pulling those insane
Sure.
weekend shifts to try to get him out there as much as we can.
Yeah, and not at all attempting to defend anything, nor am I looking to stir anything up. I think it's just, you're another person that's caught in this dramatically changing world of sport and news coverage. I've rallied against this before, so this is nothing new, but it's always been a long-term mistake for me to monetize news and sports and to put ratings on them and things like that. As soon as we did that, we changed the game forever, and we're not serving the ultimate need of the public by providing them with information. It just is. Now there's platforms like this, and what the Nation Network's doing and what others are doing, I hope is going to be the catch-all for this when it's all said and done. But you're too talented not to be still part of this mix. Having said that, it should be pointed out, because I don't think we've talked about this. You have mentioned the Maritimes, you have mentioned British Columbia, and I believe you mentioned the Prairies. Where have you not worked in this great nation of ours?
Ontario.
That's the only place.
That's the only province I've not filed a story from.
Is Ontario?
Yeah. I filed from all over BC, all over Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Quebec, all across the Maritimes, and Newfoundland and Labrador.
Wow. And the Maritimes do have a special place for you, correct?
That was my first TV job. I was 21 years old, packed up my Chevy Cruze, and I was ready to drive from Prince George to Moncton, New Brunswick. It was February. I made it as far as Edmonton and shipped my car the rest of the way.
Okay.
But it was great out there. I was only, and the thing was, I was only news when I was hired out there, and they told me you're never going to be doing sports.
Mm-hmm.
I won my first RTDNA in sports in my first year out there. You weasel your way in. I was able to do color commentary for the Moncton Wildcats and St. John Sea Dogs. I was able to chase Wayne Gretzky across the province. I accidentally called Wendell Clark old once out there. And you get to meet the Connor Garlands, the Jacob Peltiers, the Thomas Shabots before they become who they are in the big show. So I'm very grateful for my time out there.
Yeah. No, again, it's just this ever-changing landscape that we're dealing with. And I know it has to benefit somebody. I still don't see the benefit to it. I am old, but my gosh, global not having sports just seems so. You mentioned the great Ed Whalen, but I go back to Sports at 11, my first go around in Calgary, and all of those guys, and my dear friend Joe Sports, who I only got to work with for a little while, but his impact, and Grant Pollock and what he means to this city. There's long tradition of great sportscasters and great, probably the best outlet, I would say, for truly understanding the fun in sports. I mean, you've gone through some of the video, some of the things that those guys did on Sports at 11, and some of the things that Joe did and stuff like that. There was always, eventually it morphed into more, true journalism, I suppose, but it was fun. It was always fun to watch, right?
Yeah, it was. It's been really cool during the pandemic when sports were canceled. My big project was taking all of our Betacam and our tape stuff in the basement and starting to digitize it, because that stuff will eventually break down and be lost. But it's so cool to look back and see the fun things they did, but also the way that sports shaped the trajectory of our city and the world at large. Like, crazy things have happened. We still have all the old viz of Nedved defecting at the Max.
Yeah, at the Max tournament.
Yeah, defecting at the Max tournament. We
Peter
have viz
Nedved.
of him walking out of the police station with his hockey bag, still smiling and wearing his bright red Jofa bucket at a Calgary Canucks practice at Max Bell, because they had to do something with him while they were waiting for those immigration hearings. Things like that. In 1989, after the Flames won the Stanley Cup, they sent the team to the Soviet Union for a friendship tour. We have shots of Doug Gilmour running around the Moscow airport accusing people of being KGB.
Really?
And chances are.
Yeah, well, yeah, chances are they were.
He's probably
but
batting
still.
pretty good.
Yeah.
And they found the guys, the players themselves, some of this footage includes stuff that they took on the bus and stuff. Apparently Lanny was the one in charge of handling all the money.
Well,
which seems like of that group, probably the most trustworthy.
Well, Lanny wouldn't have been there, because that was after the Stanley Cup. Lanny retired.
There.
He was, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he's there. Maybe he was just an ambassador.
He might have been. Yeah, that's probably what he was. But I don't know. Did you have any viz of a young Jaromir Jagr? Because
yes.
Right. because
we
the
also
Flames
have
would
Hawk
have.
and Lube shorts too.
Yeah. Yes. Both which are legendary for different reasons.
And yeah, but like you mentioned, like Grant and those guys, and I've never actually got to meet Grant Pollock. I would love to.
You've never met Grant Pollock?
Met Grant Pollock, but I've seen so much of his stuff. I've seen stuff from when Ryan Leslie had hair. Come on. But Grant has some great stories.
True.
And one of my favorites is his interview with Lanny and Ardell after they won the cup, like looking back at all that raw stuff. The stuff that didn't make it to air. That is the gold that we're trying to preserve when we're digitizing all of their old sports stuff.
Grant Pollock, I was very lucky when I came and was hosting Flames radio, and we were allowed analysts. That lasted all of a year, but Grant and I did a lot of games together, and I got to know Grant. And I love the man. To me, he's the quintessential Calgarian. He's the quintessential Calgarian sportscaster. He could tell he had, at the drop of a hat, he had Ed Whalen stories, right? Like, and he's another guy that did it all and has seen it all. But, you talked about your weekend, and the first time I ever met Grant Pollock was at SAIT, because I was running for a year there. I ran the media operations, or the media for SAIT Trojans. And we had a gorilla as a mascot because it was SAIT at the time. And Paul Pachakowski was the actual mascot. He could do flips, and he could play a trumpet, and he could ride a unicorn. And for those who remember what I call the glory years of SAIT Trojans athletics, 96, 97, they'll remember that. And we had him dressed up as Elvis one day, and Grant came down and was doing a story on the Trojans, and he took B-roll of him sitting in the stands with the mascot, the monkey, dressed up as Elvis, having very serious conversations. And I'm like, he gets it. Like, he gets it. Like, this is such a Calgary thing. And, it's in a way, it's too bad. It's, I'm not mad at anybody. I don't know if you're mad at anybody. I'm not really mad at anybody. I think social media has played a large role in it. I would, unfortunately, we just don't, I still shocked that TSN and Sportsnet do half-hour shows because, it's all on our phone, that sort of thing. But it's tough. Like, it's hard for me to realize, and you're a friend of mine, and I don't want anything bad to happen for you. So we're going to work on some stuff and see if we can't, because you need to be in this. You do, Cami, you need to be in sports. You just need to be in sports. I said it a couple weeks ago. You just tell the right stories. You have the right temperament. I know I was talking to Kevin Hodgson from Heroes and Super, a story you did on young Harrison, who wanted to be is a goalie, a couple weeks ago. And those stories they need to be told. Those stories are still important, and we need to find an outlet for them. So hopefully we develop one, somebody develops one, somebody puts you back. Not to say that you shouldn't be covering the Flames. I think you should be, but at some point you need to be doing this. I think. Isn't this the ultimate? I think it's the ultimate. I don't know. I'm biased.
It's storytelling for me. I used to think when I got into the industry, it's like sideline reporter or bust, all about the numbers. And it was like, I really wanted to just write in the end. And just the best part of it is, and everyone says it, the best part is just talking to people, hearing their stories, and just finding a way to represent and preserve them. And there's a lot of great stories in Calgary. For all the bad that we have to uncover and hold to account, there is so much good. And we got to talk about that too. And Harrison's a great one. Yeah,
Harrison was
Harrison did not want to talk the moment I put a microphone on him and turned the camera on him for an interview. And as soon as he just went out on the ice, still with the mic on, as soon as I wasn't interviewing him, chatterbox.
Yep. No, I talked to his mom yesterday, and she wasn't there when you did the story. He was with his dad, and she could not believe the audio that you got of Harrison, because that's not who he is. He came out of his shell and was great in that piece. And again, there's junior hockey and there's minor hockey, and then there's superheroes hockey, all mixed into a great story, which you're right is absolutely Calgary. So if you truly are dedicated to storytelling, tell us the story of being 13 and the bass player in a Motley Crue cover band, because people are looking at you going, Rob's making this up, but I am not.
I may have had black and purple hair, a pair of pleather pants, A few more holes in my face than I do now, and I loved Motley Crue.
You did,
No,
eh?
yeah, no. I played in a couple bands when I was younger, and I volunteered at a music school, and we played wherever they would take us. Some Kickstart My Heart. Sometimes we journeyed more into metal and a lot of like Blue Oyster Cult stuff. That was the stuff that was fun for me.
Right.
But.
Well, because it's got, I mean, a good bass rhythm or a good bass piece, right?
Aussie songs are fun to play on bass.
Right.
Aussie songs are fun. Tragically Hip songs are fun too, actually.
How do you end up, like, I've never understood that. You look at all of the options and you go, yeah, no, you know what, I'm going to play bass. I've never understood the mentality of the bass player. What is the mentality of the bass player?
You know what? We're good with not being the star of the show. And you know that you're really driving the operation. Let everyone else get their glory. But no, honestly, the reason why I am the way I am, I was raised by mullets. My dad and his friends, just mullets, Motley Crue, AC/DC all the time. Like the guy who is my parents' best friend, who is essentially my second dad, was full on Kiss Army, has a Kiss pinball machine. Can't even count how many times he's been there. Like they took me to Motley Crue when I was 13, actually at the Saddle Dome with Aerosmith. It was a great show.
Right.
But no, I was just really into that kind of music. And I like the way that bass drives a song. And I mean, every kid wanted to play guitar.
Yeah.
But no one had a bass player. So I could play that much more and just have a lot of fun with it.
Every once in a while, you put it out on social media.
I stopped playing for a long time.
You did,
so I got pretty rusty.
Yeah.
But now we're shaking the rust off and it's just fun again.
But you're not actively in a band?
I can't with my schedule. There's some days like, when I see you at Superheroes Hockey, I've left work at about 1 a.m.
Yep.
I go home and then I get back to the rink for 9 a.m. to do some shooting. Actually, I almost broke my camera at Superheroes once. That was almost like a $30,000 mistake. I was on the ice and I'm handheld with like, I don't use the little cameras that you see some people use. Like for sports, especially, you need like the big cameras that you see at Flames games just because they're steadier.
Right.
And I was on the ice capturing some footage and I had my hands on the lens and the lens pops off. I had one hand, I was able to kind of catch it behind my back, but it was still sliding. But Lanny McDonald was at practice that day and he like whipped. Lanny still got boots on him. He whipped across the
Lanny
ice
can move.
and he caught my camera. I probably would have been fired if I broke that camera.
Oh yeah, no, that wouldn't have been a good day. That wouldn't have been a good day. All right.
He should have been a goalie.
Who, Lanny?
Yeah.
Well, I think it worked out well the way it did. I think he's okay with his life's decisions. All right, let's get to the last mile, our final mile today. Saturday night, the hockey game was straight garbage. But prior to that, I do want to tip my hat to Jordy McLeod, Steve Edgar, Dallas Kitt, Torrey Peterson, Brent Gibbs, Chris Huey, Brent Dodging Horse, and everybody else who was part of the Calgary Flames Indigenous celebration for Treaty 7 Nations. There you see it, all 7 Chiefs on the ice for a puck drop. Dodger mentioned it when he was here with us on Friday. Talked to Jordy. He mentioned it. It isn't easy to get these guys on the same carpet. They did it just from top to bottom. They did a lot of really, I think, great things. Cami, you know where I stand on this. You're either into it or you're not into it. And I thought on Saturday night, and they've taken some heat recently, the Flames did, about, the treaty acknowledgement, the land acknowledgement. But I thought they put on a really good show, and I thought they really highlighted the best of Treaty 7.
I thought it was really cool. I mean, I was always a little confused before, especially since the Hitmen and by extension CSEC have such a great relationship with Siksika, and they have a number of really great initiatives they do out there and on Tsuut'ina Nation. But as someone who's not from Alberta, I loved this because it gave me a greater sense of pride and connection to the area that I call home now. I feel like now there's more that I know about some of these nations that I didn't know about before, where I might have only known a little bit more about like Siksika and Tsuut'ina, but you learn more about the Kainai, the Piikani, and yep. I think it's really cool for us to just embrace the history of the area. I think, how does it hurt?
It doesn't hurt.
It gives you just so many more opportunities to work really cool things into the games.
It really does. And honestly, it strengthens us as a community, strengthens us as a people. And I'll say this, and my only complaint, and it's well documented and everybody's tired of hearing it, That warm-up jersey should have been a jersey. It shouldn't. They should have worn the thing the
War
whole
Pony?
game. That War Pony is amazing.
Sharp.
Hey,
Sharp.
like I love Blasty to begin with. I've always loved Blasty to begin with, but I've always loved Blasty all back to its original roots.
Really?
And the reboot.
If we dig up that tape, you were into Blasty from the start?
Oh, sure. Go back to that used to be my go-to on the old radio show. If you wanted to win something, first person in with a Blasty jersey. And people didn't like it, but I also liked, and you're too young to remember this, the big giant teddy bear that the Bruins wore. I also liked the mustard yellow that the Nashville Predators went with. I liked a lot of, I didn't have a problem with it, but we're uniform snobs. We're sweater snobs. We've come a long way. I want 41 different jerseys. That's where I want to live. It's a little much, but I think I have, have you seen the whites that the Hitmen, you've seen the whites that the Hitmen are going to wear this Saturday for Bret Hart's game? Huh. A white
Those Bret Hart jerseys are nice.
Yeah. That's Chris Huey again, folks. If you heard that name, and Brent Gibbs, if you've heard that name a couple times, they are studs over there.
But the guys some of the guys who've been working on the War Pony jerseys, but also the Every Child Matter jerseys, like Jacob Alexis and them, they do such great work.
Oh, they did that.
The orange jersey that the Hitmen wear.
Yeah, the Every Child Matter jersey,
favorite ever.
Right.
Like the details on that are stunning, and they had like
same artist.
There was one, there was at the Every Child Matters game this year, they had one of the jerseys artists had actually like beaded the whole thing. It must have taken hours and hours and hours. It
100
was
hours.
Stunning.
It is. It is. And funny enough, that's what happens when you turn it over to the people that can tell that you're talking about being a storyteller. If you take the jersey and turn it over to the people whose story it is to tell, it's amazing what happens. It is amazing. And, you saw, I love the fact that they used a different announcer. Because he's worked with us before. He was just when we did the games when the Hitmen did the games in Blackfoot, he was one of the announcers there. I love the fact that they did the national anthem in Blackfoot. I love the fact that they had the dancers and the drummers and everything. Understand how beautiful that culture is. It's a culture. Like, it is amazing. And again, I thought the Flames hit it out of the park. I thought it was great. I thought it was a good look. My problems with the National Hockey League, get over yourself, allow them to wear that as a third jersey or another jersey, one of 41.
Or let them sell them.
Yeah, please.
Even the Black History Month jersey, that one was,
it
was hard to catch some of the details on the broadcast, but up close.
Yes. Well, and that was the back of the jersey on Saturday, the warm-up jersey, like the numbers, right? And if you remember the Great Neighbor jersey the Hitmen did a couple years ago, the numbers on the back, that had meaning for both Satin and Siksika, right? So we've come a long way in terms of actually.
We should just do a jersey episode.
Well, I think Printz will tell you, every episode's a jersey episode around here.
I have a good story about Cale Makar's dad in the pedestal jersey.
Please tell.
All right.
Okay.
So the pedestal was really having a moment in the 90s. And so when the Flames hired a firm to say, all right, we're looking for something new, they designed the pedestal concept. But Gary Makar was working for that firm at the time.
Oh, okay.
And they needed a model to test how the uniforms looked on ice and on broadcast cameras. So at like 1 a.m., they would take Gary to the dome and put him in this potential uniform and just have him skate laps. And they would, all of like the Flames brass were there just lined up watching, seeing what they thought of it. The pedestal jersey originally had chevron socks that the team decided to not use, but Gary says like that's still one of his like favorite memories is being able to skate around the dome,
model,
technically being a Flame for that hour a day.
Do you know who's been a model for a couple of jerseys? Everybody's favorite, Craig Conroy. Connie, you remember the one that
a trade day deadline acquisition for the Flames?
Yeah, that Iginla hated.
Yeah.
that's my, whenever we do things together, I always get him to tell that story.
I know, I love it.
But
Connie's like one of the greatest storytellers. He's a whirling dervish. I've had him like try to do an interview from an arena on the road.
Oh yeah.
And he'll be on his phone and he'll just like stop whatever he's talking about and be like, look who's here. And just
that's him, folks.
You don't need to ask him questions. Just say, all right, Connie, go.
He's coming in studio at some point. I don't know when, but he is coming in studio. Congratulations to Mark Howell and the University of Calgary Dinos. 27 years, you said?
96. Yeah.
96. 27
I'm
years.
not that good at math. I can't subtract.
Since they won the Canadian West Championship. that's pretty awesome. And it was a great scene down at Father David Bauer, and it was a great example of that caliber of hockey. And they are going to, well, so will U of A though, right? U of A goes to the Nationals?
Yeah. Top 2 teams go.
Yeah, okay.
Canada West is strong. They're going to Nationals in Charlottetown. Say hi to Dion and Alicia for us.
Right.
Also, that UPEI rink, one-time home of Mr. Joel Ward. If you remember
Joel
him.
Ward?
Joel Ward.
The Joel Ward.
He was sick in that one
He was
series
one of
for Nashville against Vancouver in 2011. I know they lost, but he was like one of the only effective players.
He was one of the first, not the first, but at the time, he was kind of the only guy that came out of CIS and you know, and represented, but had been there for a while. And we've certainly had more since then. Ian Herbers is another one. It happens. But to your point, like, well, Howell and Mount Royal sent a bunch of guys that have gone played pro now. You know, they come back, they get a scholarship and you know, get a degree or get some education, they go play. There's nothing wrong with it. Should mention that the UFC Dinos women's basketball team didn't win, but will go.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
It was close. I mean, they were up against the defensive player of the year and Claire Signatovich. U of A was great. That was good basketball.
And St. Men won again because that's 6 years in a row or something like that. Huh? They lost. Did they? I thought they won.
They won their first game, lost their second. Oh, basketball.
Basketball,
they won 6 in a row. It is Coach Marty Berkey's last season.
Okay.
Congrats on Marty Berkey.
I
remember his very first year was when I was at St.
All right. Okay. So we're all on the same page. I was talking about men's basketball, bitter dynasty. Well, it was a way of me saying Jason Ribeiro is going to be here on Friday to talk basketball with us. And then
Do you remember the Outlaws?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's funny. We were talking about pro basketball and the Jack Simpson again.
Do you remember the Edmonton? What's this version of the CBL team? They're the Stingers, right?
They're the Stingers. Yeah, they've won twice. They've had a couple players sign those 10-day NBA contracts.
So, yeah, but in the 90s when I was living in Fort McMurray, there was a startup league, and they came up into Fort Mac and played a exhibition game. I guess that would have been the same league, wouldn't it? The Outlaws? Yeah. So, and I wanted to say they were the Stingers or the Yellow Jackets or something. They were some sort of annoying animal. Insect, I meant, I think. Anyway, last but not least, you tweeted it out. Just make mention of the Canada Winter Games, a really neat moment. Speaking of your love of the Maritimes, in a major upset.
And your disdain for the center of the universe.
Wow. I love how it's portrayed. So anyway, the tweet was, or the video was, Nova Scotia
knocked off Ontario to punch their ticket to the gold medal game.
And behind the scenes, there was Newfoundland waiting for the Nova Scotia team as they came off. And this is a great video. If you haven't seen the video, it's all over social media. Go to Cami's.
It's one of the few videos that is making it on today.
Yes.
It beat the deadline.
I know. Beat the deadline. And everybody said, oh, look at that. They're all really good sports. I said, nah, just beating the hell out of Ontario. Everybody loves.
But yeah, I mean, you just like to see that,
right?
That togetherness.
Okay.
Warms the heart. Warms the chilly heart.
Are you going to come back? You going to do this again?
When will you have me?
Oh, we do a show Wednesday. I don't think there's any argument here. Wednesday, Peter Marr will join us. And then Friday, Eric Dahachek and Jason Ribeiro. So we got a busy week. Where can they find you on social media? Are you on all of the social medias?
I'm not on the TikTok.
You're not on the TikTok?
Not on the TikTok.
Shouldn't you be on the TikTok? Playing some bass.
Like my little sister from another mister, like had me do a dance with her once on TikTok, and it was so bad she deleted her whole profile and just made a new one.
Gotcha. Well, there is
Adam
that.
McVicker from our City Hall reporter was a part of that too. We were not good.
Names being named.
No, at Cami Kepke.
Okay.
If you can spell it. There's not too many of us out there, so pretty easy to find. Okay.
Well, you're coming back, so we'll have you back on the program. Thanks for doing this today. This has been fun. Thanks to our outstanding producer, Princey. I was going to say Mark. And also Gavin, who's down the line, who's watching. Thanks to you. This has been fun. But most importantly, we shared it off the top. Good news for the Snow family. Chris got the procedure he needed today. Kelsey tweeted that. We are hoping to have Kelsey Snow join us here in the next couple of weeks. We'll get her on and we'll talk about their remarkable journey and the strength that this woman shows every single day. Said it before, I'll say it again. If you need help, if somebody's out there, if it's dark, please reach out. We are in this together. Love the fact you were here with us. Love the fact that you're coming back. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you on Wednesday.